morning, everybody here. Welcome to, I forgot our church name for a second. Welcome to House for Healing the Nations. It's so good to have you here with us and on YouTube and Facebook and any other platform that I don't cover because I can't remember. I just wanted to thank you for joining us. It's probably been a week, as it has for everybody. I feel like I say that every week. But as I was talking to God this morning about my stomach, not my stomach, no, the baby in here. I was thanking him because I mean any baby is a miracle. Let's just face facts. But for someone, people with endometriosis or like what I have, polycystic ovarian syndrome, or any other type of anything that could affect babies and conception, it's a miracle to see God's timing and the alignment of everything that He's doing. So I was thanking Him for this miracle. And he was basically telling me it was a promise that he had for me, and it was up to me to keep holding on to it. So just before, I introduced the pastor, I just wanted to say, if you know that you have a promise from God and you don't see it now. I mean, we've been married, it'll be 8 years in December, we've been together for 11. So I mean, it doesn't happen always on our time clock because God's time clock is not ours. It gets really frustrating sometimes. But his timing is always the best. So if you have a promise, hang on to that. And if you don't know if you have a promise, just sit with him. And sitting with him doesn't look like always just 5 minutes of just waiting in silence to seek out what the promise is. It takes work. And it's not always easy. But truly, sitting with him and asking where he wants to take you, what he has for you, it's incredible to just watch him unfold it. But he is doing something new, so I promise you don't want to miss out on what your promise is or what he has for you. So just keep holding on to that. That's just what I wanted to say before I introduce the pastor. Really quickly, we have our slide. I try to remember the phone number. If you're here, we have our green bucket for tithes. If you feel that God has put it on your heart to give tithes, just follow his lead. We thank you in advance for it. If you want to Apple Pay, it's 813-573-7078. And the Cash App tag is $ House for Healing. So we thank you, no pressure, just however God leads you. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Pastor Susan Sampson.
I don't think I'm ever going to stop saying I really do not like to be introduced. I really don't like to.
Was it the hands, baby? I'll do the hands.
I don't know. I don't know what that is, but it just really. I think it's because part of me is shy. So then I feel like, sometimes when people put you on a spot, right? You feel like you got to perform.
Yes.
And that just gets on my nerves because I don't like to perform, But then you feel the pressure of performing. And then you kind of like, you don't want to have this false humility like, oh, but then yet you really do like it. No, I really don't. I really don't like it. But it is what it is. And this is where sometimes we have to walk through things that we don't like, That's how we grow. That's how we grow. So today is part 3 of the journey of Lot. Now, those of us that have studied the word, we have heard about Lot and the things that Lot has gone through. But for those of you that have not, listen carefully because we have to remove some children out of here because I can't sugarcoat certain things that I'm going to have to say. In little ears, anybody under 13 might not. So if somebody is listening right now and they're about under 13, you might not want them to hear this message. So, because I'm going to be pretty straightforward about it. Okay, so just giving a recap. So here it is. Abraham was given a promise, and he was told to leave his land, leave everywhere, leave all his people, meaning his mother, father, auntie, uncle, everybody, cousin, nephew, everybody, friends, and to go to a new place because he had a promise that was given to him. He in turn took Lot with him. I do not sense that he was being disobedient. It's more like, well, what's the big deal? It's just one, it's just Lot and probably his wife and 2 children. And for him, it's not it was not a big deal. Just take one and maybe Lot begged him and he felt bad. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to get to leave and I don't get to leave. Please take me. And He probably figured, well, I'm not taking all of them, so if I take one, it shouldn't be a big deal. Can I explain to you this? That when God tells you something, you must follow it to the T. Because when you think that something is not a big deal, or when you try to interpret it your way out of human understanding, sometimes we're going to get it wrong. And we're going to create something that should not have been created. Okay? Now, I'm going to say something that's going to sound pretty harsh, and a lot of people might not like this, but yes, babies are blessings, but there are times when God gives us a warning about not being with this person, blah, 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 and then you wind up making a baby. And you don't know, having that baby, yes, a baby is a blessing. And I'm not saying that, you should get rid of the baby, because I'm here to tell you this church does not promote abortion. So I'm going to be very straight with that. We do not. So if anybody wants to send me any mail, you better keep it, because I'm not going to read it. Okay? Because I feel very strongly about that. And I have a friend that used to work in an abortion place. I know what goes on in there. I know exactly what goes on. And for a long time, I was very conflicted, because I was like, but what about if somebody is raped or this or that or whatever? Listen, no matter what, taking of a life, I don't condone, Do I condone, like death sentences and things like that? Well, to be perfectly honest, if they had did something like, take out children, I might. I have a soft spot when it comes to kids. It just gets to me when I hear kids have been victimized and things like that. But if you leave them in jail for the rest of their life, that works for me. Okay? You don't have to always take them out. Sometimes leaving them alive is the worst thing. Right? Sometimes, because they get to live out their problem. They get to live out what they did until they get to go home. And then they got a whole new set of problems when they do go home and see Jesus. I mean, that's a whole new problem that they have to deal with. But bottom line, what I'm saying is that, we do not encourage abortion. Now, if you've had one, we don't sit down here and hold you. We don't condone you, right? I don't believe in doing that neither. Everybody has their own walk. I'm just not going to be one of those that are going to be like, okay, yeah, it's okay to do it. All right. So when you have a child and that child was not supposed to be created, you don't know what you're creating for the future. So let me give you a hint. Like, take, for instance, Abraham. God told Abraham he was going to have a son who was going to be Isaac. Because they were so old, they used human knowledge. So they said to themselves, him and Sarah, they were like, well, we're too old, so obviously you're going to have to go and be with this lady, the servant. And they created an Ishmael, right? Ishmael was not supposed to be created, because that's not what God said. And because of that, we deal with Ishmaels today, which is the Muslims that rise up against Christians. So do you see what a long-term, that's a lot. That's a long-term effect over one birth. We don't see how things can be changed. Now, I'm only speaking to those that have been told you shouldn't do this, this, and this. I'm not telling people, don't have children, don't do this. I'm talking to those that have heard God say, don't do it. Or you've heard God say, leave that woman, leave that man. I've heard people, and I know for a fact that they got a word from God that they should not be with that person, but they still stayed. Their life was hell. But it's not a punishment from God, it's your own hell you create for yourself. So we need to stop and think about those things. We need to stop to think about what we blame God for and what we need to take responsibility for. Because not everything is, oh my goodness, God's punishment. Sometimes we are the one punishing ourselves. In my culture, we say your ear's hard, meaning you don't like to listen. You got to go over and over and do things over and over again. Well, if you have to go through that over and over again, yeah, you're going to be learning some hard lessons. I suggest you wake up and learn your lesson the first time. Don't keep going around the mountain. So now we're jumping back to Lot. So here it is. Abraham brings Lot. Lot prospers. He gains what we call money today. Is what their money back then was cattle and all this other stuff. And his wealth grew being around Abraham. But his wealth grew because he really sucked off the blessing that was on Abraham. You see, because Abraham was given a promise, not Lot, but he benefited off of his promise. If he had stayed home, he wouldn't have gotten nothing. Now, some people will say, but that's great though. At least he got, he got some sort of reward and he benefit. Not so much, because not everybody can handle money. Not everybody can handle power. Sometimes it lets go that green-eye monster. Sometimes greed gets hold of the person. Guess what? It's never enough. They want more. So then we get to find out that Lot goes ahead and he gets, captured, and then Abraham got to go and bail him out. And he still didn't learn his lesson. He still didn't turn around and leave. He still didn't go back home. At that point, when you get captured, you might say to yourself, well, maybe this is not the place I need to be right now. Maybe I need to go back home, or at least go someplace else. You know what I mean? No, he did not. The word says that he pitched his tent outside of Sodom. Well, we get to find out last week that he wound up having a house inside of Sodom. So somewhere he went from outside of Sodom to inside of Sodom. You see, because when you're on the outskirts of something and you see temptation, if you keep trailing, it's like an alcoholic. If you keep on going to the bar, you may not pick up a drink. But if you keep visiting that bar, eventually, one day you're going to have a bad day. And you're going to drink. Well, he pitched his tent outside of Sodom. Well, he's hearing the partying that's going on at night. He's hearing all the laughter. He's hearing that, from the time that he walks in there, maybe during the daytime, he sees people, they got stuff. And I want to believe that it enticed him. That's why he stayed. He was enticed. I do not think he would have been enticed if he did not stay home. There would have been nothing to entice him. But instead, he was there and he was enticed. So guess what? He went inside. He formed a life with his family, his wife, his 2 kids. But he believed the Lord. He loved the Lord. But this is the thing. He was dabbling with things that were not okay with God. And he knew that. He knew it wasn't okay with God. But he stayed because he was being enticed. He was liking having his house and having whatever it is that he had. They say in there that apparently he was like a judge, and so he worked in there, he gained some respect. Until God said enough. How many of us know that there are times when God say enough? Okay. And this time he did. And so he sent 2 angels to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah and all the surrounding areas. And God still had mercy upon him because of Abraham. God still had mercy. Now here it is. Lot doesn't even know this, but back at the ranch, Abraham is having a talk with God, and he's over there trying to let's work out a deal here. If you find 50, will you not destroy the place? If you find 40, if you find 30, finally they landed on 10. If you find 10, let me see, Lot, his wife, 2 kids, that's 4. But can I tell you what was the damning thing for Sodom? What sealed the deal for Sodom is when they turned around and it said all the young men, old men came together. The men wanted to have sex with these angels, the 2 men that were there. And it said it was against what God It was against God. Now, I want you to be very clear about this, because I know a lot of people are going to go ahead and want to send me some messages about homosexuality and all that. I want you to listen to me very clearly. It was about the heart of the person, and all of them wanted to do something that was dishonoring to God. It could have been same sex, it could have been heterosexual, it could be anything. The fact that you want to have sex with angels, I'm thinking that's a no-no. Okay? You have to keep in mind that these are two people of God. They are pure. They come down from heaven taking human form. They have no blemishes. Okay? And you want to commit an act like that. God created sex as a form of intimacy between husband and wife, between them to go ahead and have children. Whether it was a woman that wanted to have sex with them or a man that wanted to have sex with them, the point is they wanted to have sex with them. That was the point. The point is they wanted to do something that was not correct, not right in God's eyes. And that was the final deal for God. Because there was not anybody that jumped up and said, no, 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 don't you see that there's something different about these guys? Except for Lot. Lot is the only one that said, no, 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 you can't do that. Not with these men. And they were willing to do horrible things. They said in there they were going to do something worse to Lot than what they were going to do to the men. My God, you can't even imagine what they were probably going to do to Lot just so they can get to him. That tells you about the evil in their heart. That tells you about the evil that was in their heart. That they were willing to destroy somebody just to get to these two angels. Now, granted, they didn't know that they were angels, but if they had just a smidgen of God, they would have known that they were angels. Okay? So there was nobody jumped up and said, no woman, no kid. Nobody said, listen, we shouldn't be doing this. No, don't do that. You see, if a couple of them had jumped up and said that, it would have been saved. Because at least you just needed about at least 6 more. Okay, we had 4. Okay? You just needed 6. That's it. 6 more people to jump up and say, no, these are anointed people. This is anointed people of God. These are anointed men. Okay? Man, woman, nobody can have sex with them. Nobody can do anything like that. Nobody's supposed to be dishonoring them. Because that means you're dishonoring God. But nobody said anything. Everybody stood quiet. Everybody shut their mouth. And everybody just went along with all of it except for Lot. So Lot gets spared. His wife gets spared, sort of. Because then, as my son says, she was dumb. She turned around. But as we found out last week, really, he was the head of the house, Lot. Lot put his wife in a terrible position. She's exposed to all these other women that did questionable things and everything else. And there's something that opens up when you dance with the devil. He was not only dancing with the devils, but he was camping in the grounds with them. You have to believe that some residue of what's going on and then would be transferred over to you and your family. He, being the head of the house, should have removed his family. He shouldn't have even gone in. But he was only thinking about self, what he wanted. He didn't stop to think about what's the effects that this can have, what they're doing, right? Sodom and Gomorrah was dealing with a lot of sexual perverse things. Right? Women were prostitutes and there was a lot of perverse things going on. There was a lot of greed going on. There was a lot of money being exchanged. Okay. And listen, money is not a bad thing, but it is when your heart is caught up with greed. So he exposed his wife to that and his 2 daughters. In fact, the word says that he even said that they were promised to 2 men. So He didn't even try. He was going to have his daughters marry into this. Can you see how he put his family in danger? So now here we go. We want to blame the poor Lot's wife. My God, you don't even have a name in the Bible. Lot's wife. I mean, you go to Jerusalem. It's terrible. There's a pillar there and it says Lot's wife. There's the arrow. Look it up. You can put it on YouTube. You can look it up and you can see it. And there's a pillar right there that shows Lot's wife. Their God. That's what she's known of for centuries. All because her husband, who's the head of the house, didn't make the decision that he was supposed to. Do you see what happens when you make decisions, when God has said something? He said something from the very beginning that Abraham was not supposed to be with anybody. Abraham was the only one, him and his crew. That means his wife, his cattle, his maids, servants, whatever it is that he had. It was his household that should have left, and that was it. Lot decided to jump on the bandwagon. Look at all these things that happened. Look at all the stuff that's happened with Lot. Well, guess what? Now we're going to go to Genesis 19. And we're going to start with 30 to 32. Good. Lot and his 2 daughters left Zoar and settled in the mountains. So this is after Sodom got destroyed. They went and settled in the mountains. So they left the city that they begged for. For whatever reason, he didn't feel comfortable, whatever. So I guess he felt like maybe the people would have turned on him and say, why is it that you survived it? And blah, blah, blah. So he decided to leave. And he went into the mountains because he was afraid to stay in Zoar. How do you pronounce that word? Zoar. Like in Zorro?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Zoar. There it is.
Like Thor.
Like Thor. There you go. Zoar.
I said Thor.
Thor, Zoar. Okay, there we go. So he and his 2 daughters lived in a cave. One day, okay, let's just stop right there. So here it is. We went from having a lot to now now living in a cave. Can you see how the mighty have fallen? Can you see how he was up here, next thing you know is down here, because he didn't follow what God wanted. He didn't follow what he was raised with. He didn't follow what he was taught. Sometimes we open up doors that now we have to follow what we open. So here he is. It says, now he goes to the cave with his 2 daughters. So one day the older daughter said to the younger one, our father is old and there is no man around here to give us children. And is the custom all over the earth. Okay, so now in their mind, they think that they're the only ones alive. Like how? Don't you know that you got an uncle named Abraham and he got a bunch of people? I mean, really? So I'm trying to figure out what was going on through these girls' minds, that they went ahead and they feel like the father is the only man on earth now. That's a big earth. And you're going to think that he's the only man left? So it says in verse 32, it says, let's get our father to drink wine and then sleep with him and preserve our family line through our father. I cannot tell you how many times I've read that and I said, okay. Well, okay. Yeah, so that's the direction you're going to go in, right? I'd rather go out there and try and find somebody. There got to be somebody. At that moment, Abraham will pop into my mind. I would go over there and snuggle up with Abraham and all his little, his family and everything else. I'm like, I'm not going to be dad? Really? No. But yes, you know why? Because the environment that they lived in was okay with that. Sodom. The environment that Lot allowed his family to be exposed to said it was okay. How many times you know that when you're exposed to something and people say that it's okay, eventually you say, okay. So we got to do what we got to do. We got to preserve our line. So we got to sleep with dear old dad. Because he's getting old and we don't know how much more seeds he got left. So we got to do this thing. Dear God. I'd rather not have children. Okay. I mean that sincerely. Okay. So, verse 33. That night, they got their father to drink wine, and the older daughter went in and slept with him. He is not aware of it when he laid down or when she got up. So this is the thing. He had not a clue, right? Nothing about when the first daughter went in. He got drunk. He's older. It probably takes a stronger effect now that he's older. So he had not a clue. So she literally slept like with a dead body, kind of. You know what I'm saying? Because he was unconscious. I know the thoughts. But I mean, if you think about it, when somebody is out cold and they said he was not aware, that means there was very little movement. He was not aware. He was unconscious. So they had sex with literally an unconscious person. It's like a dead body. Okay. And let me tell you, if they knew they were doing something wrong, or they wouldn't have gotten their father drunk. Okay? Because they just would have sat down and had a talk with him if it was okay. If that was truly the custom that they were raised with, as being Israelites, if that was truly their custom, then they would have said, Dad, listen, there's nobody else around, we need children, blah, blah, blah. You think you might, in order for you to get this done, you think you might drink a little bit of wine so we can get, get the seed going. Really? Nobody talked. They talked to each other, the two girls, but they didn't talk to Dad. Instead, they deceived him. They learned about deception living in Sodom. It's amazing when you're in the place that you're not supposed to be in, the things that you learn stick onto you and they will be passed on through your generation. So here it is. He had no idea when the first one laid with him. So on verse 34, the next day, the older daughter said to the younger one, last night I slept with my father. It's like they gave each other a high five. I mean, I just don't understand this. Let's get him drunk again tonight. And you go in and sleep with him so we can preserve our family line through our father. Listen, sometimes we convince ourselves that something is good when we know darn well it's not. So they try to convince themselves that this was an okay deal. Well, if it was really okay, then why are you going to talk to your father about it? Why did you deceive him? So they got their father drunk with the wine that night, and the younger daughter went in and slept with him. Again, he was not aware of when she lay down or when she got up. Again, they specify. So before we go on to the next part, has anybody really got what really has happened here? That there's deception, but there was also rape. They raped their father. What a violation is that? Now, I've heard this sermon preached before, but I've never heard anybody admit what these girls did. I've never heard anybody say the words. Well, I'm here to say the words. They raped their father. Because you know what? We're living in a time now that if we go out with somebody and somebody slips us something, it's called date rape. Okay? If we're somewhere and somebody goes ahead and gives us too much to drink, or they see us that we're drunk and everything, and they had sex with us and we have some sort of residue, that's called rape. So therefore, these women performed an act. They raped their father. That is another huge violation. And can I tell you this? It's not only a violation to God, it wasn't also a violation to their father, but it was a violation to their entire bloodline. The Israelites, they violated their own bloodline by doing this. So in verse 36, it says, so both of Lot's daughters became pregnant by their father. The older daughter had a son. She named him Moab. He is the father of the Moabites of today. The younger daughter also had a son. She called him Ben-Amin. He is the father of the Amalekite. So who are these people? They became Israel's enemy. Their violation that they did started a violation that continued for generations. Because their two sons grew up. They were forged out of lies, deception, violation, betrayal. They were formed out of that. And because of that, they went ahead and grew up and they became enemies of Israel. Their own bloodline. They became enemies. All because the daughters violated. All because Lot allowed them to learn that. If they were in another location, somewhere else, he didn't even have to return back home. If he wanted another life, a better life, he could have said that. Now, Abraham, what do you suggest? Because Sodom is a little sketchy. I can't go over there. You know, they got things going on there. I can't go back. What do you suggest? Well, how about this? Go to God. Ask God. Father, can you give me a promise like you gave to Abraham? Can you tell me where to go, where we can, be blessed? Why? Why? Because it doesn't say in here that he said any of those things. Why? Why didn't he ask that? Why didn't he go to God for the protection of his family? But instead, what's the big deal? We're just going to raise them here. Well, the big deal is that your children's mindset changed. And what was once not okay is now okay. When you put your children in an area, they're going to learn what is in the area. They're going to learn by their environment. Well, these girls must have seen all kinds of things. Okay? It became like second nature to be dishonest. So here it is. They took that on. They went ahead and became dishonest. So where it is that Abraham settled in Canaan, Lot could have picked anywhere else to be, and he did not. He instead went over to this place that he knew that God would not be okay with. And here we are. The Moabites and the Mennonites and all the differentites are all out there rised up based upon one simple action, one simple decision. Do you understand that one decision can bring generation of things? One decision can do that. So it says in Deuteronomy 2:19, I didn't give you this, Matthew, so it's okay. Then the Lord said to me, do not haste the Moabites or provoke them to war, for I will give you any part of the land I have given the descendants of Lot as a possession. So in Deuteronomy, it talks about that when they were coming up ready to fight, he told them, okay, don't, just leave them there. I gave them that, leave them there. But you see, that wasn't still good enough, because it even shows that Saul had to wind up fighting the Moabites and Mennonites and all them other knights and Philistines and everybody else, all of them, that he had to wind up fighting all of them. So do you see how many generations that had to go through? Even though God gave them an area, listen, this is your area, you stay here. He told other people, don't bother them, leave them alone. But they still came, because guess what? They were forged out of greed. They were forged out of enviness and betrayal and all the good stuff. They were forged out of that. So that's their mindset. That's how they lived. And there it is. It talks about how that they became the descendants of Lot. This is what's Lot's legacy. His one decision is rised up against his own people. Rised up against his own uncle's people. He loved his uncle, as far as I know. I mean, it doesn't say that he didn't. Right? But who are the descendants of Israel? Not Abraham. They're Abraham's people. So Abraham and Lot, descendants, were destined to lock horns, to fight, for them to betray Abraham's legacy. All because Lot didn't do what he was supposed to do. All because Lot didn't turn around and choose a different location. He didn't do something different. I can't drown this in enough to make you understand that Lot's role of being passive and saying, oh, it's not a big deal, and wanting money and everything else, bore something else. It birthed something else through all of that. He reaped what he harvested. He reaped what he sowed. He reaped all of this. I mean, that's terrible. He went from having a house to living in a cave. Now you're trying to tell me there was no other place to go? But I think a part of him was ashamed. And he just, sometimes when we see that we've had so much and then we lose everything, we have two ways of handling things. We can either turn around and be like, okay, cry, I've hit rock bottom. Because everybody hits rock bottom at some point in your life. I've hit rock bottom. And you just say, okay, God, where do I go from here? Or you can get angry, stay angry, and go in a pity party and become a victim. Lot did that. He didn't just sit there and be like, oh my goodness, what did I do, Lord? Blah, blah, maybe I can go to my uncle and talk to him. He didn't do any of that. Instead, he sit in a cave. And I'm sorry, but he could have told the daughters no thank you to the wine. I think he was already knocking back a couple of few on his own, because where his mindset was. Because the mighty has fallen. He didn't have what he had before. He's an old man now and he has nothing. He don't even have a wife. He has nothing except for these two girls that don't even have a husband. He could have made other decisions even up until that moment. He could say, girls, tomorrow we're going to travel. We're going to go find, Uncle Abe. I call him Abe. I know he's Abraham, but I call him Abe. Go find Uncle Abe. I'm going to throw myself on the mercy of Uncle Abe, and I'm just going to see what he can do for me. I mean, if he point me into a little corner with a little tent or whatever, I'll be fine. Or maybe, he can tell me what direction I could go in that will, be okay. I don't have to stay with him. But he didn't even try. He didn't even try to do something different. He just went into that cave And he basically just nursed his wounds, and he went in there, licked his wounds, and he felt sorry for himself. He drank. I mean, the same thing that happened to Noah. Noah got drunk, sat in the cave. I mean, all kinds of things happened, all because human beings sometimes fall into this place called depression. And sometimes we have to fight against it. Sometimes we have to get up and make a conscious decision that we're not going to do something. Sometimes we have to say, okay, I'm going to feel sorry for myself tonight, but tomorrow I'm going to get up. Okay, I'm going to lick my wounds today. I'm going to cry. Right? But then tomorrow is a new day. I'm going to get up and I'm going to do something different. Well, that's not what's happening. That's not what happened. So then guess what? Now he really is a victim, because now he wakes up and sees his two girls now, and then eventually the tummies are getting bigger, and now they got babies coming out. And he's like, well, what happened? So now he gets to find out that he's the daddy of those two babies. And he has to watch his decision that he made now grow. They don't talk about Lot anymore. I think that enough says it. Isn't that a terrible way to go? Isn't that a terrible way to end your life? One mistake after the other. All because, oh, it's not a big deal. You know, I watch this world and I sit back and I see so many people, they get very upset and, you know, they're like, oh, you know, things need to change, blah, 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 and everything else. And everybody needs to just simply love one another. And that's true. We all do need to love one another. Right. But there are things that we must look at what God is saying and live according to what God is saying. Because, wait for it, he knows better. He knows better. He knows the beginning and the end. And let me tell you, I've always been a person that never liked just doing like what everybody else. I just finished having a conversation before church started with my kids, before everybody got here. And I would say, I told them, I said, you know, I was thinking about a car and I wanted this car because not everybody has it. I don't like having something that everybody has. I don't. It bothers me. Mm-hmm. Right now I have, my daughter's gracious enough to allow me to use her car right now. And she has a Chevy Cruze, and every time I go park the car, I always lose it. Because there's a bunch of Cruzes that's there too. So I'm always walking up, and they're all white. Hello. And then if it's not a white Cruze, it's a white Honda. So by the time I get them, I'm like, oh, that's a Honda. Oh, that's a Hyundai. Oh, that's a Toyota. Oh, for the love of, because they all look similar. You know what I mean? So then one day I lost the car, and I was with my granddaughter running through, trying to go like this, trying to look for the car. I mean, it was, she's like, we lost. No, honey. Yeah, we are. But no, honey, we're not lost. Oh, Jesus, help me. Holy Spirit, make the car just light up. And then it starts to pour. And then I'm like, oh, for the love, Jesus. And then I stop and I said, Jesus. Just show me, okay? And then I look up, and then he has me replay where I parked and everything. Well, because you know why? There was a bunch of other white cars in between there, and it's like all of them look the same to me. And there was like, no lie, there was like 3 or 4 other Cruzes there too. And I'm saying to myself, I just can't. So here I am running back and forth. One is over there, one is over there, one is over there. I'm like, which one did I park? Which one belongs to me? Turned out none of them belonged to me. I was in the wrong area. Okay? I was in the wrong area. Finally, I find the car. I got in the car. I said, this is exactly why I don't like to get a car that everybody has. Because I don't like to go along with the flow. I never have. Ever since I was little, I didn't like to go with the rest of the flow. Everybody wanted to do this. I didn't want to do what everybody did. I never knew what that was. Some people saying I was rebellious. Okay, we can go with that if we want. But I didn't. I still don't like it. I do like to do what God wants me to do. And sometimes what God wants me to do is not always what everybody else wants to flow with. I watch this world and I see what's happening in this world. And there's a lot of things that if we stand up for it, people are going to come after us for it. But guess what? I'm still willing to stand. The same way I'm willing to stand about abortion. Now, granted, I know Roe versus Wade got overturned, and a lot of people are going to turn around and say, that's not right. What about this? What about that? But this is why I trust to believe that God has the answer. I don't have to have all the answers. I just know that this is not what God wants. And I trust that he's going to figure out the rest, okay? And I have news for you. Back in the days, you see, when Lot's children raped him, there was no abortion. They had the babies. Now, granted, they turned out to be, against the Israelites, but still. The point is, there are a lot of things that have happened, and sometimes certain things have to happen, especially if it's been set in motion. Now, granted, now a lot of people might not like what I have to say with that, and they're going to probably want to know about my other views about other things. Trust me, you probably might not like what I have to say. But that's not what this sermon is about. This sermon today is about not going along with what you see, but to stand up with God and do what he is asking you to do. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if you're not getting what you want, okay? You want to be a millionaire, but God is telling you that you need to go become a missionary. We all know missionaries don't become millionaires, okay? And you're like, but I want to become a millionaire. But that's not what God is saying. Because you ever stop to think that maybe you can't handle the million? You ever stop to think that maybe you're going to do some bad things with that money? Yeah, in your mind at that moment, you're like, no, I'm just going to get a car or two. I'm going to get a house or two. I'm going to go on vacations. Now, suppose you go on a vacation and you go someplace and the plane goes down. Your butt wasn't supposed to be on the plane. If you had the money, you won't be on a plane, would you? Not going to that destination. Sometimes you just don't know what you're walking into. And instead of crying about it and saying, it's not fair, say to God this: what is your plan for my life? Why is this happening? The other day, my daughter-in-law went to go pick up my granddaughter because she had a tummy ache, and we didn't even understand why the tummy ache happened and what was going on and everything else. And she went and got her and everything else. And everybody had a plan. And so that kind of put a spoke in the plan. You know what I mean? You know what I said to her? But you just don't know what accident you avoided. Maybe God had you go get her because there was an accident that was going to be there. And you don't know. So sometimes we don't complain. I'll tell you, I'm one of them. I do it sometimes too. If somebody cuts in front of me and I'm like, oh, for the love of God, I'm the first one to say something. Why? And then they slow down. God, that gets on my nerves so bad. And then one day God said this to me: Susan, calm down. You do not know what you're avoiding up ahead. And then one day, he proved it to me. I had just passed through something and an accident happened. And I literally just missed it. And okay, Jesus, I get it. I'll be good. I won't say anything. I still complain a little bit, but especially when I'm in a rush, I'm rushing. And then I have to quickly grab my thoughts and say, Susan, stop. You don't know why this is happening. So then my words changed. And I said, Lord, make a move. Make a move. Can you be like that movie? What is that movie's name? Bruce Almighty. You know what I was talking about, huh? Like when he just made all the cars move, in my mind, I'm like, move, and then they don't move. I was like, okay, fine. So can you just make them just go a little faster or do this or do that? Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. And then I stop and I accept that because I realize that maybe there's something I'm avoiding. It doesn't necessarily mean it could take my life, but it could mean that I could end up in hospital and be in a whole lot of pain. I'm not looking to be in pain. I'm not looking to go through. So I have to make sure that I keep my ears to God and understand. Does that mean that you won't never go through anything? No, that does not mean that. We all have to go through something to learn. We do. And that's how we build our character. That's how we grow, right? We all have to go through something. But I'm here to tell you, those of you out there that's listening to this, if you're going through something, God has put it in my heart that he's about to do something huge in your life. So I'm believing that you're going to get that breakthrough. And for some of you out there, it may not look like a breakthrough, but he's going to take you through a journey that you have to go through. Do not fight him on it. Go through the journey, because when you come out of it, you're going to be so much better. You fight what God is doing, and you can make a Ishmael. You can make a Moabites. You can make something else. You can make bad decisions, and your wife becomes, or your husband becomes, a pillar of salt. You know what I mean? You can make bad decisions. Stop fighting against God. Stop fighting God and bow your knee. And just because your human mind does not understand all the things that are going on, and by the way, you don't always need to know. I know we live in a country that we think that we're entitled to know everything. We are not entitled to know everything, because that will make us gods. We are not gods. We're little gods, but we're not gods. In other words, we were created in his image, but that doesn't make us the God. We are not superior to him. We're not on the same level. We don't roll with him. Okay? We don't. He rolls in a totally different area than we do. And so for those of you that are struggling and going through and you're at your end, I know what that looks like. I know what that feels like. I'm asking you right now to just simply bow your knee before him and say, God, whatever your will is for my life, but I'm just asking you to give me the grace. I'm asking you to give me the strength to go through what I'm going through right now. Give me the wisdom. Say, Holy Spirit, give me wisdom. Give me understanding. Show me what I'm supposed to do. Bow the knee and ask the question. And be okay with the answer. Or even if he doesn't answer, be okay with that too. So I'm going to go ahead and end off here. And I'm going to say this, please, 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 please. Don't live in your flesh. Die to yourself. Allow God. Because you just don't know what the journey is going to look like. And I'm here to tell you, you don't want to see a bad decision unfold, because then you can't change it. You can't. Don't be Lot. Be Abraham. Abraham had his flaws, and he made some decisions that he shouldn't have. But no matter what, his heart was for God, and he always bowed his knee to God. So I ask this. So now we close off. Father, I thank you for this word, and I pray that anybody that listens to this, let them not get stuck on the world and what the world says, but let them hear your words and what you are saying about them in their life. Father, I thank you so much for the opportunity to preach this message, Father. You know, this was a hard message. It was sensitive, and I didn't really want it to go ahead and engage in it, Lord, but you gave me the strength and the will to do it. And Father, I always will say yes to you. And Father, I pray that everybody else that hears the sound of my voice will do the same thing, that they will bow their knee before you, and that they will say yes, even when it doesn't make them feel comfortable, that they will say yes. They will do what needs to be done. In Jesus' name, amen. So I thank you for joining us here at House for Healing Nations, and I pray that you all have a wonderful week. Next week, we're going to be discussing about the Holy Spirit and the gifts that we get from the Holy Spirit. There are 7 gifts that we get. And we need to ask ourselves, do we have all 7? In other words, have we allowed ourselves to flow in all 7 gifts? And I'm thinking that's probably going to be a 2-part, maybe a 3-part, not sure. But anyway, have a wonderful week. Take care. Bye-bye.